Hello everyone. Welcome to our session on exceptions in Java and overview. The agenda for today's session is what is an exception? That is, how does an exception arise in a Java program? Then exception handling fundamentals. How can an exception be handled? Then third, the types of exceptions, that is checked exceptions, unchecked exceptions, system defined and user defined exceptions. And fourth, we'll be covering a simple example, an example showing exception handling in a Java program. So there's a section break and we'll be covering exceptions in Java first. So welcome to the topic on what is an exception. So an exception is nothing but an abnormal condition that arises in a Java code at runtime. So when an abnormal condition arises in a Java code at runtime, it is known as an exception. And Java's exception handling brings runtime error management into the object-oriented world. So this is what we can speak about exception. Exception is nothing but an abnormal situation inside a Java code. So this is what is exception. Now we'll come to exception handling fundamentals. So fundamentally, for exceptions, we have five keywords. They are try, catch, finally, throw, and throws. These are the five keys or five blocks of code that we use for exception handling. Try is used to maintain risky code. That is, the code where an exception may arise is written inside the try block. Catch is the block to maintain exception handling code. That is, if an exception occurs, then that exception is caught inside the catch block. And then finally we come to the finally block. That is, try, catch, and finally they work together. So if try is the block where there's a risk code or error code. If an error occurs, then it goes. The exception is caught in the catch block, and exception occurs or no, it comes to the finally block. And finally block, what's written is executed. So to maintain the cleanup code, we come to the finally block. And throw and throws. Its throw is to hand over a created object to the JVM manually. That is, if a error is caught and you don't want to execute the catch or execute the error over there or display the error over there, then it can be handed over to the JVM manually using the throw keyword. So the object of the exception can be thrown by the using the throw keyword. And throws is to delegate the responsibility of creating exception handling to the caller. That is, throws is used to make the compiler understand that this particular function contains these many exceptions. So if when you look at the function, the compiler looks at the function, it comes to know that these many exceptions may occur in this particular bit of code. So this is what is a throws a keyword for. So we have the five exception handling fundamentals. Next we come to the types of exceptions. Basically, it is the throwable which is at the top of, that is, java.lang is the package inside which there is a class named throwable. So the throwable class, it contains two subclasses, exception and error. Now all the exceptions, that is, whenever there is a condition where there is a problematic condition arising inside a code, then it is, which can be handled by the program, then it is an exception. Such errors which cannot be handled by the or such problems which cannot be handled by the program, such errors are called errors. Such problems are called errors. So they are listed in such a way. And then inside exceptions, the most important type of exception subclass is the runtime exception, because it is the basically most of the exceptions, built-in exceptions, are all of the runtime exceptions. The runtime exceptions are the most important part of the exception class. So basically, throwable is the base class which has got two subclasses, exceptions and errors. Errors are something which is not may possibly handled by the programmer. The programmer can handle exceptions, and inside the exception class, we have the most important of the exception subclass is runtime exception. So here throwable is the base class of all the exception class, and we have we also have error class under the throwable class. Those problems in the system which cannot be handled by the program is known as errors, and that is what is error class. And under the exception class we have the runtime exception, which are the basic built-in exceptions in Java. So the basic built-in exceptions in Java are basically runtime exceptions. Now we'll have a pictorial representation of the exceptions handling phenomenon. That is exception handling in Java. So we have to think of the throwable base class, and throwable has got has got a class subclass exception. The exception class can basically be divided into two, that is checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. Here, what is a checked exception? Checked exception is something which is caught at the compile time. So that is a planned action. So a person, just consider a car. A person is moving from Princeton to New York. He's traveling by car, and he's planning a particular error or something can happen on the way. So he plans that if an accident happens, then he would call 911 or his dad. So this is a planning that he's made. So if it is a planned action, then it's a checked exception which happens at the compile time. Next is an unchecked exception which happens at the runtime. So planning not possible, that if an exception is unchecked exceptions are something which is not possible with planning. So if a brake fail happens, then what you are supposed to do is fix it before running the car. That is what can be done, and that is unchecked exception. And error is something where you can't plan, where you can't fix. Then that is an error. That is if a volcano eruption happens in between or onto the place where you're moving on the way, then it's something which nothing can be done about. So it's an error which cannot be solved. So errors are such things which cannot be solved. Checked exceptions are planned. Unchecked exceptions are runtime, which cannot be planned. But then it can be solved and we can continue. With errors which cannot be planned, which cannot be fixed. Now we'll see how we use the try and catch. It's again a pictorial representation. Any code where an exception can occur is written inside the try block. Then if the exception is caught on execution, then it is caught by the catch block. And then there is also a finally block which is executed even if an exception occurs or no. So these are the three blocks. Now just see this diagram. Here the try block, it contains the code where exceptions may occur, may not occur. If the exceptions occur, they are caught in the catch block, and if the exception doesn't occur, it doesn't go to the catch block. And finally, if it's not written over here, but then we can have a finally block also. Finally block executes even if the exception occurs or no. So this is the way. Now, built-in exceptions. What is a built-in exception? So as I told you earlier, exceptions that are written by the system in the Java API. That is what is exception, built-in exceptions. Those exceptions which are written in the Java API. So basically, in the exception class, we have some built-in exceptions. They are runtime exceptions, class not found exceptions, file not found exception, interrupted exception, installation exception, illegal access exception. Here, the runtime exceptions are arithmetic exception, class cast exception, illegal argument exception, index out of bounds exception, and null pointer exception. Here again, inside the illegal argument exception, we have the number format exception. And inside the index out of bounds exception, we have the array index out of bounds exception and the string index out of bounds exception. So inside the runtime exceptions, we have so many exceptions, that is runtime exceptions, are something which occur at the execution time and which cannot be predicted earlier. So next, and these exceptions, they are all in the APIs that are provided by Java. Now, user-defined exceptions are something which we define, that is at runtime. Just consider an example like class connect. This is when you're connecting this is depending, that is a user defining his exceptions according to his need in a program. Now just consider an example where a user has to connect to a particular server. When he connects to that particular server, there are chances that you don't get connected to the server. So when the connection is not happening to the server, then an exception should be thrown, and that exception should be written by the user itself. So this is a situation where the user writes an exception, and for creating an exception, he has to subclass an exception class. So the exception, user-defined exception, is always a subclass of the exception class. So, and then you can create the exception and then call it similarly as you write the usual exceptions. So we will do a program regarding user-defined exceptions in our regular sessions, because it's not possible that within this short time I tell everything, cover each and everything. So in our regular sessions, I'll be making you do an example on user-defined exceptions. Now, a simple example showing exception in Java. Here, I'm demonstrating a multiple catch statement exception. That is, class multiple catches, public static void main string array of args. Inside the try block, I write int a is equal to args.length, system.out.println a is equal to plus a. So the value of a has to be printed. A is the number of arguments that I enter at the runtime onto the command prompt. Now int b is equal to 68 by a. Here a is the number of arguments and 68 is the number. So 68 by a. If a is 0, then we'll have an error over here, which is arithmetic exception. So that exception is being caught over here. If it is not caught, again the compiler will show the error. Now int c is equal to 1. So we have just assigned a value. We have not given its size. The size of the array is not been assigned. You're just assigning a value 1 to this integer array c. And then C12, that is in the C in the 12th position, is assigned 99 as a value. Now we know that C12 is equal to 99 is again an error, because in the 12th position we have not assigned the 12th size of the array, and 12th position there's no value. When such a assignation for C occurs, only in the 0th position 1 will be assigned. So C12 is again a wrong entry, and array index out of bounds exception will be thrown over here. So now if the first exception occurs, then arithmetic exception will be thrown, and if if the first exception doesn't occur, the second exception will be thrown. So this is the simple example. Now you look into the output. Here we have two situations. So in the output, first situation is when I don't pass any number of command line arguments. Just see here, if I say java c multiple catches .java, it's compiled because there's no error. We can execute java multiple catches. Here I have not passed any arguments. So a is equal to 0, and since a is equal to 0, we'll have arithmetic exception, divide by 0, java.lang.arithmetic exception by 0. So and after try catch blocks, that has been written over here. So this will be printed. So this is what is the exception that is thrown in the first situation. Now we'll come to the second situation. Here again I'm running the same program. So I say java c multiple catches.java, java multiple catches. I say hello aria. So when I pass two parameters into it, a is equal to 2. So when the value of a is 2, so naturally I won't have arithmetic exception because the value of a is not 0, so we won't have arithmetic exception divided by 0. Now, but we'll have the array index out of exception over there. So index 12 is out of bounds for length 1. So that is what is the exception which is thrown over there. So these are the two outputs which is possible for that program. So this is just a simple program that I've shown you. We have many more programs to be done over here in exceptions. This is just a simple program. So please attend our regular sessions. Then you'll be able to understand more on this topic. And then if you think this is good enough, then please like, share. And if you think this is good enough to subscribe, then please press on the bell button and subscribe it. And thanks for attending our session on exceptions in Java. Thank you.